Ticking down to the August 31st deadline the Biden administration set for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan. And although American allies, along with several members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, have been pressing him to extend that deadline, Pentagon officials reiterated today troops will be out by the end of the month.
There's been no change to the timeline of the mission.
But while Biden and his team keep making the case that this is the best course of action, critics argue it's just the latest example of the president's refusal to change course in a way they say could save many more lives. It was just a few short weeks after the U.S. started pulling troops out of Afghanistan that the Taliban managed to retake the country, something the White House said they'd expected would take months. But others argue the warning signs were there and things should have been done differently. And not all those arguments are coming from the right. Democratic Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan, an Air Force veteran from Pennsylvania, released a statement saying, "We sounded the alarm and our dire warnings fell on deaf ears." And Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts declared after Kabul fell, "To say that today is anything short of a disaster would be dishonest. Worse, it was avoidable." In the days since, Biden's poll ratings have fallen to a record low 41% approval, according to a USA Today Suffolk University poll out this morning, with only 26% of respondents approving of how he's handled the Afghanistan withdrawal. Still, the president remains steadfast and unapologetic, raising the question, is his leadership style the right one for the moment we're in? Joining me are Gautam Mukunda, Harvard Kennedy School fellow, host of NASDAQ's World Reimagined podcast, and author of Indispensable, When Leaders Really Matter, and Tina Opie, visiting scholar at Harvard Business School and the founder of Opie Consulting Group. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Tina, let me start with you. If we take the withdrawal from Afghanistan as a case study in crisis management and political leadership, what has President Biden gotten right and what has he gotten wrong?
Thank you for that question, and it's great to be here. So I would say that President Biden is doing what I think he believes is right. The decision that he's made is something that may align with his personal values, or at least it did in the past. One of the things, I'm a registered independent, so that I don't mean this as a political commentary. I think that he has made quite a few gaffes, and that these gaffes could actually have a huge detrimental effect on Afghan citizens, as well as people from around the world and U.S. citizens. And specifically why is because I think that one of the things that Biden may have gotten wrong is, at least from the media perspective, it doesn't look as though he did a good job of gathering alternative perspectives and approaches from diverse stakeholders. And so he may be falling into a trap of what is considered to be politically expedient right now. I think sometimes leaders have to make decisions that may be unappealing to chief constituents, but if that is truly what you think is in the best long-term interest, and based on your data and your research that you've gathered from multiple stakeholders, they are in agreement with that, that's okay. However, having said that, I do think Biden is in a very difficult position where he's sort of damned if he does or damned if he doesn't. But for me, the critical piece is him announcing the withdrawal before taking care of the people who were already there. That to me was a fatal leadership mistake.
Gautam, what stands out to you on the negative side? And if there's anything on the plus side, I'd love to hear it. I'm not sure if there is.
So no, there is. And in fact, it's striking is the extent to which it has been almost impossible to find pro-withdrawal voices on the mainstream press, when actually quite a few of us think that it was long overdue to leave Afghanistan. So I want to step through this logic very carefully, right? If Biden had started pulling people out before we announced the withdrawal, that would have been an unmistakable signal to everyone in Afghanistan that the withdrawal was happening. And the collapse that we just saw would simply have happened 6 months earlier, right? So you have to work your way through the logic here. What he did was pretty striking. Biden wanted to pull out of Afghanistan when he was president. Trump announced many times that he was going to pull out of Afghanistan.
Yes.
He never did, right? What's happening is pretty simple. Everybody would prefer kicking the can down the road and saying, well, we'll let the next guy deal with it, precisely for fear of the optics that we saw on the first day of the withdrawal. But if there's any conclusion we see, that if the Afghan government falls less than 2 weeks after we would pull out our troops, This is a pretty clear signal that we were not winning the war, right? In fact, if you look at the data, it's clear that even while we had troops there, the Afghan military was taking tens of thousands of casualties. The Taliban were gaining control of territory. We were losing the war even when we had troops there, right? So by essentially what Biden said was, I'm willing to bite the bullet and accept those optics and take the hit to get us out of this 20-year debacle. And I think we should actually give him a lot of credit for that, because every one of his predecessors was unwilling to take the hit to do something that they pretty much knew we had to do. And I'll also note that that I have profound concerns with some of the tactical details of how the withdrawal was staged. In particular, I don't actually understand the decision not to maintain control of Bagram Air Base, which would have made the evacuation process a lot more easy. But I'm just going to note, right, in what's being billed as a gigantic disaster for the American military, the total number of American soldiers killed is 0. And we have already gotten more than 40,000 people out of Afghanistan, with the rate of people being evacuated going up every day. I do not underestimate the unbelievable humanitarian catastrophe that's going to be unleashed on Afghanistan. But if we have learned anything from these events, what we should learn is there was no scenario where we left and the Taliban did not run Afghanistan. That was not one of our options. We could be there or the Taliban could be in control. But there was no set where it was we were not there and they were not there. So Biden, I think, correctly said it's going to be now or it's going to be later. Well, we're spending $3 billion a month in Afghanistan. We're losing American lives in Afghanistan. To do that just to put off the inevitable for another 5, 10, 15, 20 years seems, the definition of bad leadership. And I'll give him a lot of credit for saying that. It's time to go.
That makes a lot of sense. Everything you've just said, both of you, makes a great deal of sense to me. But let me ask you, Gautam, that the part that I, as a citizen, voter, have had the hardest time with is not that we haven't decided to dig in and spend another 5 or 10 years to win what, as you say, seems to be an unwinnable war, but that we are in the process of leaving behind people who put their lives at risk to try to help us when we thought we could win the war there. And that gets back to your point about Bagram. I am no military expert, but I have found myself wondering, I think a lot of people have, wait a minute, why couldn't we have worked to find a way to get some of these people to safety before allowing the inevitable collapse to occur?
Mm-hmm. So this is a moral non-negotiable, right? So Seth Moulton, who's Seth is an old friend of mine, an old and dear friend of mine. This is one place where he has been heroic, right, over the stance of his career, sort of in the face of significant political opposition, standing up and saying, look, we have to get these people out. The problem was, right, is to go back to what I said earlier. If you say, well, we're going to pull 100,000 people out of Afghanistan out before we pull our last 2,500 troops out, do you think anyone in Afghanistan would not have realized that we were gone? Right? Again, we would have precipitated exactly the events that we have just seen. That being said, the failure of the administration to prepare for this, right, to go through and build the visa process, and the one thing I'll say in mitigation here is they're doing this without a team, right? The Senate has still not confirmed most of Biden's foreign policy team. The people who would be responsible for executing on this are not in the job yet because they have not been confirmed by the Senate, which is a disaster of another order. But yeah, there's absolutely no question that the preparations for the visas, the handling, after the Trump administration zeroed out all of those things, that needed to be brought back up to scale much faster than it was. And I suspect the administration, if you got them, would admit that this is something where they did not handle it as well as they should have. Well, whatever the mitigating circumstances might be, we need to do better.
Tina Hope, I heard you raising I think a dissenting voice there a moment ago. Let's rewind. What were you going to say? You're not necessarily sure if you agree with Gautam on.
Right. Well, I think Gautam, you've done a great job of delineating your logic and sort of repealing the logic that I think you hear me saying. My concern is there's this conundrum that I think we're confronted with, such that your argument is that if we had begun to pull people out earlier, the Taliban would have become aware and we still would have disintegrated into the same situation. I'm not a military expert, but my understanding of one of the reasons why the Taliban is so hard to fight is that it's not necessarily this fixed, fully organized entity that has access to a lot of the data that the United States government in collaboration with the Afghan government might have. And so I think that that's an assumption. So for me, the critical issue, hold on 1 second. Let me just, let me finish. So for me, the issue is I'm agnostic to the go, no-go decision. So that's where I think you first misinterpreted my comments. I'm not saying that we needed to stay longer in Afghanistan or that we needed to leave right now or later. My point is simply that when I look at the research that I've done on the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it seems as though there could have been some more surreptitious, behind the scenes things going on that could have helped to sort of help get people out of Afghanistan so that the Taliban was not in a position to know that that was going to happen and then pick up steam. Now, maybe that would have happened regardless, but I don't think it's a moral non-calculation.
I want to pull back for a second. We could actually, this is a fascinating and very complex discussion, and we could continue for a bit. We've only got about 3 minutes left, so I want to hit on a few other points. Pulling back, Joe Biden has been in office for about 8 months now after a long career in public life. Prior to that, I'd love to hear what each of you has identified at this point in time as his distinctive approach to leadership and what he wants to accomplish in what he's told us is going to be his only term in office. Tina, let's start with you, and then we'll hop over to Gautam.
Yeah, I mean, I think he really tries to appeal in this warm, affable way. You can trust me. I'm Uncle Joe. I'm telling you like it is. I think that's been his approach. I think he is a president who very much, at least, I think he believes that he is comporting with the promises he made during the campaign. So I think he is someone who prides himself on being authentic and transparent and honest. So I will pause there. I know we're about to run out of time. So Gautam, what are your thoughts?
I'm just going to note, so far as I know, he has not announced that this is his only term in office. That would be a really big story. So I just want to, you might want to retake that.
No,
not you, Tina.
I said that. And perhaps I'm probably referring to, reports I've read about private, he's indicated that he's likely to. So yes, thank you for that valuable correction. We're not breaking.
That clarification. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute.
but I'll say what's striking about the Biden administration is I think that and it's important to note the depth of his experience. Biden had 44 years in senior political office before he became president of the United States. That is almost twice that of any previous president. Okay, almost twice. So what he seems to have done is, in essence, understood the political dynamics in a way I would not have anticipated, which is that he is pursuing extraordinarily ambitious goals. And let's not understate them. Just as an example, our best estimate is that the payments that have gone out to families already have cut child poverty in the United States by 60%, 60, in 1 year. Right, he is pursuing a set of goals of social transformation in the United States whose scale has been unseen since Franklin Roosevelt. They vastly surpass those of Barack Obama. But at the same time, he has done that by using all the assets that Tina identified, the Uncle Joe, the affable, the I don't create opposition for all, and right. By essentially, he is pursuing enormously ambitious goals with a mask of sort of small change in such a way as to minimize the backlash that crippled the Obama administration's efforts in the same direction. That is a sort of solving a political puzzle in a way that I certainly did not see coming, and I think very few people did.
That's a great note to end on. I'd love to have you guys for another 20 minutes, but your point about remembering things that might have happened longer than a week or two ago is extremely well taken, as is the real-time fact check. Thank you for that. Gautam Mukunda and Tina Opie, thank you both for being here to take stock of the moment we're in.
Thank you.
Thank you.